questions because I decided to be prepared. Please tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Paul Thomas, and I'm an Associate Professor of Education at Furman University.
Okay. How does your work involve writing in digital environments?
My scholarship, I do a lot of writing on blogs, and there are more and more electronic scholarly journals, and I use Twitter a lot for scholarship. And then with teaching, I use blogs for all my courses, and I also use, I would call it a digital world, having students submit work in Word, and then I respond in Word.
How does what you do involve more traditional pre-digital forms of writing?
Not as much as it used to, but it's still, a lot of the scholarly world is still hard copies. In other words, the final products, the published journals tend to be hard copies. But even that, most of the submission process is electronic. Still in the classroom, I would say that students especially still like things to be hard copy. Most textbooks are hard copy, and even if you provide things digitally, students tend to print things out.
All right. What tools and technical skills do you use most often in your work?
Technology-wise?
Yeah.
I do almost everything at my laptop. I'm on it most of the day, every day, and so I have to, and a lot of the places that I publish are self-publishing blogs, so I do have to know how to format my own work, and the environments that you publish in on blogs have a lot of variety to them. That there's technical different things to do in different environments. So most of it is the blog and Twitter sphere and just basic Word and that kind of thing. But I work almost exclusively at a laptop if I'm not teaching.
Do you have any exciting stories about how those technological things have come in useful for you?
Exciting. The only thing I think that borders on exciting is the blog world allows it to be interactive. I tend to comment on online writing, and when people comment on my online writing, I comment, and that is generally tense. So I would say that's probably exciting because it's generally not pleasant interactions. I enjoy doing that, but and I think it's kind of important to do that. But I do it a lot of times to show students so they see what other people think.
How has your job changed over time as new digital technologies have been adopted?
I'd say the biggest change is I'm primarily a writing teacher. Is that I do all of my students submit everything electronically, and I do all of my responses electronically. And for my 18 years of teaching 100 plus students who wrote 40 essays a year, that was a lot of paper. I marked everything in hard copy. They turned everything in hard copy. Every single paper had to be completely rewritten over and over again. So there was a lot of tedium for students to try to rewrite their stuff. Students can write 4 and 5 or 10 versions of a paper, and they just work right on Word, and it's not nearly as tedious for them. And I think being able to respond by track changes and putting comments in the Word is huge. I think that's a really big difference. The scholarly world's changed a lot too, because more people are doing what I call public intellectual work. They write commentaries and they blog, and so some of us are doing probably more blogging than we do traditional scholarship. And I think the blogging is more important than traditional scholarship, because if I submit a piece to a traditional publication, it may be a year before anybody sees it. If I have an idea, I can blog it this morning and several hundred people will see it. Those are the biggest changes.
Has it been difficult for you to, I guess, adapt to the different changes that technology has brought about?
And I don't think for me it hasn't been. I like it. I like most of the changes. I like simple things like being able to have connection to Twitter and my email and to Facebook directly through my cell phone. And I can be in constant contact with my students. And they tend to appreciate being responded to quicker than quick. So that adapting for me hasn't been hard. I think it's been harder for the students. Students don't really like things digitally as much as you think they do. They don't pay attention to the blog. They ask me 20 times, where is this? And I say, it's on the Google Doc link that I sent you at the beginning of class. And they don't think electronically. You would think young students would be technologically savvy. I find they're not. That's a myth. They can use their phone really well, but that's about it.
What changes do you anticipate happening in the future as new digital technologies are introduced?
I hope that we move almost completely away from hard copies. I think the biggest change should be textbooks. I think I've thought this the whole time I've ever taught, there should be no textbooks. I think everything a student needs should be accessible through the internet and should be free. I don't think students should be paying money for textbooks. It's insane. If the government would step in and do what it should do, the information that students need in school shouldn't be commercialized. There's no reason for there to be a market for it for students. So the textbook companies regretfully make a living off of education that I think they shouldn't. So I think that should be the biggest change. Online education will probably increase, but there's a lot of problems with it. And there's already a lot of corruption and bad education online. So I hope we don't quit having face-to-face education. But we may. Holograms or just one teacher and 60,000 students watching videos.
How is your website important to your work?
I have about 23,000 blogs, partially because of my ADHD, but I have a primary blog that I post everything that's my work. So I do have a centralized blog that helps me keep all my work in one place, but it also is a place where people who care about my work can see, and it's everything, it's anything that I write. So I think it's really important. The main thing is that I now know that people read my stuff. When I wrote stuff before, in scholarly journals, there may be 100 professors that own the journal and 4 that read it. And then why do I care if another professor reads what I wrote? Because we think the same thing. But if 500 people in the public read something, I think that's a good thing.
All right. In your work, does your organization use social media like Twitter and Facebook?
Our education department does have a Facebook page. That they did that reluctantly. It's been hard to get them to do it. I think we're supposed to have a Twitter, but I don't know that we do it. Furman is on Facebook, but I don't know that it's on Twitter. People have gone to Facebook, but I find for scholarly things, Twitter's way better. I got pulled into Twitter because almost everybody I follow is a education scholar or a teacher, and I don't do social Twittering, I do professional Twittering. And it's outstanding. I mean, I can read Twitter in the morning and get 25 pieces of research that I in 2 minutes that it would have taken me weeks to find on my own. So I think we do Facebook, but that's about it, I think, in our department. I think we're sorely lagging on that.
So you think it would be useful for, I guess, your department and the school to make use of Twitter and Facebook?
I think they should. I think they've begrudgingly done a little bit of Facebook, but I don't think nearly enough. People are still a little alienated by Facebook. My cycling, there's some cycling groups that just post things on Facebook and then people don't know it exists. Facebook's not really like a web page. I think Twitter's better. It's so quick and it's easy to control what you're looking at. So I think people are behind the curve on Twitter. I think it's got a lot of more potential than people realize.
Do you measure the impact of the choices you make in using social media or your website or traditional print publications?
I don't know if that means if I take into account my decisions based on whether it's electronic or not. But I definitely, if I understand that, I definitely gravitate toward the electronic social media. And a few of us at Furman, a few professors have been trying to make the argument that like public commentaries we think should count more and should count as part of our scholarship as opposed to basically as a professor, if you're not getting published in peer-reviewed journals, it doesn't count. So our argument is that if I write an op-ed and 1,000 people read it, and if I write a peer-reviewed journal and 2 people read it, that op-ed should count more. So I spend way more time on electronic social media than I do on traditional print. Although I still buy books. I'm a hard copy book person. I've done some electronic ebooks, but I don't like them.
What are the most significant advantages of working with digital tools and networks?
I think it's interactive. I wrote a piece yesterday morning, and it came out of a discussion on comments back and forth on a blog posted on Ed Week, and I basically wrote it as a response to the people who were arguing with me. And then when I posted it to them so they could see it, one of the guys pointed out that I had made an unfair statement, and I agreed with him. I thought that I was being too flip, so I actually went back and edited it. So now it has changed because of him. And and I even I sent him the link and I said I've edited it because I think you made a good point. And I even put a little asterisk in it and for people who are reading it to let them know that at one point it said this, but I changed one word. But I think it was the right thing to do. But it's interactive, so I like that, especially if it's interactive with people who don't have your viewpoint. Books aren't interactive like that. You can interact with the book, but it's different.
What are the most significant disadvantages?
Probably most people would argue that it's too easy to get stuff out there. So I think some people would think that it's a quality control problem. I think that's, but I've read peer-reviewed things that were awful. So I think it's I think that's probably, anybody can post a blog. And if you're not a good consumer of blogs and you're lazy, then I think that's your fault. I don't think it's the blogger's fault. So, scholarship tends to move very slowly. So most people, I get these backhanded compliments or direct criticisms for writing too much and too often. So scholarship tends to want people to go slowly and produce slowly. And so against those norms, that would be a problem, but I don't think that's a problem. The volume of what I do, I don't think should be criticized. Of course, that's me talking about my own work. So,
let's see. What advice would you have for someone who is still completing their college education and wants to eventually do the kind of work that you do?
Read, and then read some more. I would just get involved. I think that's the one nice thing about the digital world is you can jump right in. You don't have to wait to have a terminal degree. You can blog, you can be on Twitter. Be very judicious about who you follow. Find some people that do what you do and follow them on Twitter. See what, learn from what they do. And most people, a lot of people tweet professionally. So if you follow their professional tweet, some people will have a personal Twitter account, a professional one. So I think that's the good thing about social media and sort of the electronic world is you can have way more insight into what it's like to do the thing you want to do now than when I was your age. There wasn't that open access to it. I got a cycling buddy who jokes about he wished he had a professor degree, and I told him he could have gone to school for it. So, I mean, it's just, scholarship and teaching are just academic things. So, I mean, it's reading and writing. But I would go ahead and get involved in those media now, because you can. There's nothing to stop you from using Facebook for more than social things, using Twitter for more than social things, using blogging for more than social things. Especially if somebody wants to write, I would just start a blog. Just start a blog about something that you enjoy and learn how to write by writing. And getting people's feedback would be huge. And if you can find a niche, find things that people care about. That's what blogs are all about. There's tons of nerds out there that like the narrow thing that you're interested in. I think that's what the electronic world is for, the nerds.
Yeah, definitely the nerds.
Convening of the nerds.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us that we haven't already talked about pertaining to this subject?
I think maybe I'd just add that because of social media and the electronic world, we're starting to rethink reading and writing, and I think that's a good thing. I have a column that's ending in English Journal, and the point of it was to argue with English teachers that we should rethink what counts as text, and part of it is based on my comic book, and the argument that it's not just words on the page, that we read movies, we read comic books, and so I think we're going to be forced more and more to reconsider what reading is and what writing is for our students, and I think we're going to have to open up to more things. I think that's going to be good for students, because I think students' literacy they're more successful in a wide variety of things. So if we only have traditional print text on paper, reading and writing, that limited which kids were successful. So I think if we open that up, I know students find out that they can read graphic novels instead of regular books. You've got 10 kids reading now that weren't reading before. So I think the electronic world will open up even more. There are kids who will blog that wouldn't want to write a paper for class. So, and there's kind of, some kids would get into writing 140 characters for Twitter. It's a different kind of writing. So they would see it as a challenge. It would be fun for them. And that would be good for them to do that. Like writing haikus on vacation.